YouTube. Hey, good morning, second graders. It is Wednesday, the last Wednesday of January. Okay, so yesterday when we stopped with AJ, like we are ready for AJ, breakfast with AJ, they were counting down a humming sound, and the spaceship took off with Mr. Granite in it. Then all of a sudden the door opened, or the window opened, and Mr. Granite yelled out, "Turn to page 23 in your math book." But he never had a chance to finish that sentence. So, chapter 5, the new teacher. We all watched as the spaceship with Mr. Granite inside lifted slowly up off the playground. This time, there were no cows around to mess things up. The ship zoomed to the left, then it zipped to the right, and then it was gone. Mr. Granite had left the planet. For a few seconds, nobody said anything. There was nothing to say. Then Emily, the crybaby, started crying, of course. After that, everybody was crying, even me. Mr. Granite was weird, but he was a really good teacher. "What are we going to do now?" Andrea asked, wiping her eyes. "We don't have a teacher anymore. How can we learn anything without a teacher?" That's when I got the greatest idea in the history of the world. If Mr. Granite was gone, we didn't have a teacher, and if we didn't have a teacher, we couldn't learn anything, and if we couldn't learn anything, there was no point in going to school. And if there was no point in going to school, they would have to shut it down. "No more school," I shouted, jumping up and down. "No more school! No more school!" I figured everybody was going to jump up and down and chant, "No more school" with me. I looked around. Nobody else was jumping up and down. Nobody else was chanting. Everybody was looking at me. I hate when that happens. I stopped chanting. "We'll just have to deal with this tomorrow," said Mr. Klutz sadly. "For now, let's all go home. It's 3 o'clock. Time for dismissal." The next morning, I couldn't wait to get to school to find out who our new teacher would be. Was it going to be a man or a lady? Young or old? Dark hair or blonde hair? Short or tall? Skinny or fat? Human or robot? Meat eater or plant eater? Regular or extra crispy? As it turned out, the answer was none of the above. When I got to our classroom, there was no teacher in there at all. So me and Ryan and Michael did what we always did. When there were no grown-ups around, we shook our butts at the class. "Boys," Andrea said, rolling her eyes, "I wonder who our new teacher is going to be," said Alexia. "Beats me," said Neil, the nude kid. "Where would you go to get a new teacher anyway?" asked Ryan. Rent a teacher," I replied. "You can rent anything." "We'll probably have a substitute teacher for a few days," said Andrea, who thinks she knows everything. "Mr. Klutz will need a little time to hire a new teacher." "Teachers get hired?" I asked. "Does that mean they get paid too?" "Of course teachers get paid, dumbhead," said Andrea. I want to say something mean to Andrea, but I couldn't come up with anything besides, "So is your face." I didn't know that teachers got paid. I thought they just came to school every day because they had nowhere else to go. "Maybe Miss Daisy will become our teacher again," said Emily, all excited. Miss Daisy was our teacher in 2nd grade. She was a good teacher, except for the fact that she couldn't read, write, or do math. Come to think of it, she was the dumbest teacher in the history of the world. "Her name isn't Miss Daisy anymore," Andrea said. "She got married. So now her name is Miss Daisy. Her name is Mrs. Daisy. When ladies get married, they go from Miss to Mrs. And sometimes they go from Miss to Ms. Nobody knows why. But our new teacher wasn't going to be Miss Daisy. And it wasn't going to be Mrs. Daisy. And it wasn't going to be Ms. Daisy either. Because the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. You'll never believe who ran into the door at that moment. It was a guy wearing a superhero costume. He ran right into the door. Then he fell into the classroom, slammed into the teacher's desk, and toppled over onto the floor. Woo, the guy moaned. I think I might have broken my leg. We all ran to the front of the class to help the guy up. Are you Superman? Alexia asked. No, he replied. I am Cooperman. And there is Cooperman right there. So tomorrow when you come back to school, we will read chapter 6 and find out what happens. So chapter 6 is Mr. Cooper is super. So that will be their teacher, I believe, Mr. Cooper. Okay. I will see you in just a little bit with some other things to do. Remember, 9 o'clock, Google Meet. Goodbye.